Bill Russell deserves to be in the conversation for one of the greatest NBA players. His greatness is above most. If you ask me, the absolute lowest I would ever put Bill Russell all time is number 6. And honestly, I think top 5 is a completely fair spot. First, let's talk championships. Bill Russell won 11 titles in 13 seasons with the Boston Celtics from 1957 to 1969. 11 championships, which is insane. It's basically impossible to overstate how dominant that is. Now, I know what people say, yeah, but there were only 8 to 12 teams back then, or he had stacked Celtics team with Hall of Famers like Bob Cousy and Sam Jones. And sure, that's true to a degree, but here's the thing. You can only beat the competition that exists. You can't control which era you play in or which players are on your team. You play against what's in front of you, and Bill Russell dominated it. Speaking of teammates, it's true that Russell had some Hall of Fame talent around him, but not all of them were stars. Some of those guys got in largely because of the Celtics dynasty or their coaching careers later on. When you look at the prime stars Russell had, it was really Cousy, Tom Henson, Sam Jones, and eventually John Havlicek. Those were the players he leaned on the most. Compare that to Wilt Chamberlain, who by the time he got to the Sixers in 1965-66, teaming up with Hal Gehr, Billy Cunningham, and Chet Walker, a pretty solid crew. And then later in Wilt's Lakers years, 69 to 73, he had Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, and later Gail Goodrich. That's arguably a stronger supporting cast than Bill Russell had during some of his championship runs. Yet Bill Russell still put together 11 championships in a way that Wilt simply couldn't match. From 66 to 73, Wilt won just 2 rings. Not bad by any stretch, but it shows how much of an outlier Russell was in terms of translating his skill into championships. And let's be honest, at no point did Bill Russell ever have a teammate quite like Jerry West or even Elgin Baylor. Beyond just winning, Russell completely transformed the Celtics. Before he arrived, the Celtics' highest single-season win percentage was 64% in 1953. After he came on board, for 8 seasons, he led the team to winning percentage of 70% or higher, with their lowest still being 58%. And after he retired, the Celtics missed the playoffs both in 1970 and 1971. Now, let's talk defense, because this is where Bill Russell truly becomes untouchable. Before Russell, the Celtics were never good or elite defensively. They ranked outside the top 5 in defensive rating in the 8-team NBA era. Then Bill Russell arrives in 56-57, and boom, they jump to first. For most of Russell's career, the Celtics were the top defensive team, and often by a significant margin. Defense was his bread and butter. In fact, I would argue that Russell's defensive impact is as dominant, or maybe even more dominant so, than any great offensive player like Jokic, Curry, or Magic Johnson. Here's the thing about Bill Russell as a player. Your goal should be winning, and he absolutely prioritized that. Bill Russell wasn't stat padding. He didn't chase scoring titles or records for the sake of personal glory. He played to win. His Game 7 record, 10 wins and no losses. In those 10 games, he averaged 18 points and almost 30 rebounds, which is insane. He could score when needed, but he was just as happy focusing on defense, rebounding, and making his teammates better. Imagine if blocks were an official stat back in the 1960s. Imagine if they had Defensive Player of the Year award back in the 60s. Bill Russell would have won almost all of them, but he didn't care about accolades, he cared about winning. One of my favorite quotes from him is, "The most important measure of how good a game I played was how much better I made my teammates play." And that's exactly what makes him special. Basketball is a team sport. You can have amazing individual stats, but if you're not elevating your team and helping them win, what is the point? Bill Russell understood this better than anyone. This mindset reminds me a lot of Tim Duncan. I've always loved Tim Duncan because he reminded me of Bill Russell in so many ways. Dominant defensively, focused on winning, unselfish, and an amazing leader. Both players define their teams and eras not just through scoring, but by being the cornerstone of a team's success. That's why you can't just look at stats like points per game when talking about Bill Russell. And speaking of accolades, don't forget he did still win 5 MVP awards. That's 5 times he was recognized as the best player in the league. Not for scoring the most, but for being the most impactful, most indecisive player, which is insane dominance. Bill Russell basically invented modern defensive schemes. He could protect the rim, control the boards, and make his teammates better defenders. His understanding of spacing, timing, and positioning was insane. Every championship team he led was anchored in his defensive genius. Offense was secondary to him, but he still had an offensive game when needed. So, where does Bill Russell rank all time? Top 5? Absolutely. Top 10? Fine. If you're trying to be conservative. But the more you study his impact, the more it becomes clear that top 5 is absolutely fair. When you consider championships, defensive dominance, leadership, and unselfishness, Russell's resume is pretty much unmatched. He redefined what it meant to be a winner in basketball. At the end of the day, greatness isn't just about the stats, points per game, or flashy highlights. It's about winning, leadership, and making your team better. Bill Russell did all that better than almost anyone in NBA history. And that's why, in my opinion, Bill Russell deserves to be in the conversation, not just for being a top 5 center, not just for top 5 1960s players, but top 5 all-time, period. So, that'll be it for this video. Leave a comment, tell me what you think. I much appreciate it if you click that like button. Thank you for watching.